Hello, America and the world. This is Radio Free Market, and I am your guest host, Pat Barron. I'm standing in for the regular host and founder of Radio Free Market, Michael McKay, who is taking a well-deserved vacation this week. Well, we are behind the lines of socialism, my friends, and Radio Free Market is the voice of free people and free markets. Our topic today is the path from big government to smaller government. And our guest is Kevin Williamson, who is Deputy Managing Editor of National Review magazine. He's a columnist for The New Criterion and a professor at the King's College. Kevin is the author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism, which is coming out just next month. I'm looking forward to getting that, Kevin. And his work has appeared in the New York Post, Commentary, the Indian Express, Our Sunday Visitor, and other publications, including National Review itself, where I've read many very, very good articles by Kevin. Kevin is working on what he refers to as his, quote, big book, unquote, which he has provisionally titled After Leviathan. And his thesis is that the current size and scope of government is not sustainable, and that society will organize itself along other lines. So, welcome, Kevin.
Hey, Pat. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Well, Kevin, you sent me the outline of your new book. Had the first couple chapters written, and I tell you, I could not put it down. It's wonderful writing, and you're laying out what a market-oriented society would look like. And you say, I believe, and you can talk about this, that this is inevitable. And could you first of all tell us why is going from big government to smaller government inevitable?
Well, I don't want to say that I think it's inevitable. I would say that there are enormous economic, financial, and political pressures pushing us that way, and that our current model of a large, high-revenue, high-intervention welfare state is unsustainable. So where we are in history, I think, is that we have a choice in front of us, which is, do we want to make the arrangements and provisions to make the transition to a more free society, a more market-driven society, or do we want to try to cling blindly to what we've been doing in the past? And if we attempt to do that, we are going to inflict catastrophe on ourselves. We will have, an Argentina-style currency meltdown. We will have fiscal crises from here to the historical horizon, probably social disorder and unrest. So there's a real choice in front of us. What is inevitable is that our current model of government is going to change because it simply is it's mathematically not sustainable. It's not going to happen. One of the things I often tell Republicans who are very upset about things like Obamacare is that they really shouldn't worry about it too much, because even though the law's been passed, it's not going to happen. We don't have the money to implement it. The economics of it are so bad and so backward that it's probably not implementable. And so, a lot of the things that we'd like to change, entitlements, government involvement in healthcare, government overreach overseas, things like that, those things are going to change whether we want them to or not. The question is, are we going to have an orderly transition that produces something that's better and more liberal and more fruitful and more productive, or are we going to have disorder, as Murray Rothbard put it, or are we going to have chaos, or are we going to have anarchy?
Very good. I think what really got me was in the first couple chapters of your book. You say that although there's various ways to calculate this, that our current unfunded liabilities for the nation amount to over $130 trillion.
It's all the money in the world. It's more than global GDP, more than the whole world's money supply.
Right. In fact, I calculate if you just divide $130 trillion by the 300 million American population, that means that every man, woman, and child in America is on the hook for over $400,000 right now.
Right, which means it's not going to get paid.
That's just unsustainable. Well, folks, this first little segment of ours has come to an end very quickly, so I would like you to stand by. This is Radio Free Market. I'm your host, Pat Barron, and we're talking with Kevin Williamson about going from big government to smaller government. So please stand by after the break. Well, folks, this is Pat Barron, your guest host on Radio Free Market, and my guest today is Kevin Williamson from National Review Magazine. And Kevin, during the break, I would like your listeners to know, the listeners out there to know that you're going to be on Bill Bennett's show tomorrow. Now, this is going to be recorded, but I would imagine that folks may be able to archive that, and you'll be on Fox TV. So congratulations for that.
Oh, thanks.
I will watch it live. We talked about the end of big government is coming, but can we really live without big government, or are we just going to go to some kind of is it mandatory that we go to some sort of more command and control economy?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things about that. One is that because of our national identity as Americans, we really take our sense of national identity from our Constitution and from our form of government. We're not a traditional sort of ethnic state or traditional sort of religious state where your national identity comes from your heritage, from land and soil and altar and throne and all that sort of stuff. We're really have been defined by our political traditions, which means that we invest a lot emotionally and a large sense of our national identity in our political institutions. Which is good in some ways because it makes us a very open society. You can become an American in a way that you can't really become Chinese or something like that. But the truth is that these things change, and that the American people and the American nation is what it is, regardless of its particular form of government. We're the same people now that we were in 1914 or 1868, but we've got a radically different kind of government than we did then. The truth is, as I see it, that government is essentially a consumer product. Government is like shampoo. It is laundry detergent. It's a car. It's a cell phone. It's something that is there to do particular things for you. There's certain kinds of tasks you want done. And the truth is that our current model of government just doesn't work for us anymore. I mean, it may have been a good model in the 1930s. It may have been a good model in the 1920s. It may have been a good model at some other time, although I have my doubts about whether it was ever really a very, very good model at any time, although it has been very stable over the years, and we've had, compared to the rest of the world, an outstanding government. But the truth is that it cannot do what we want it to do, and it can't do what we want it to do for the means that we have available. I mean, if we had infinite money and infinite wealth and there was no such thing as scarcity, then yeah, you can do whatever you want to with government. But ours, government in a sense is a promise. A government like ours is a promise, and it's made all sorts of promises about Social Security, about national defense, about entitlements, about taxes, about other sorts of things. And the truth is those promises are not going to be kept. They simply cannot be kept. It doesn't have $400,000 for every citizen. It doesn't have $130 trillion or more to settle its liabilities. So, if you would ask someone 100 years ago what a telephone would look like in the year 2010, they wouldn't have been able to tell you. If you'd asked them what a television would look like or how newspapers would be delivered, online as opposed to in print form, they wouldn't have been able to tell you. There's been lots of innovation in the world, particularly in the areas of the world that actually work really well. Our telecommunications is great, but our government services stink. There's a reason for that, and that's because people in the private sector have to compete for revenue. They have to innovate. They have to bring quality up and prices down, whereas the state doesn't have to do that. So it's hard for me to say what the institutions that I think will replace our kind of command and control institutions will look like 100 years from now or 200 years from now or even 10 or 20 years from now. But I do think that if we play our cards right, we can evolve, freer, more effective alternatives.
Well, and I think that a lot of the alternatives we can look historically that yes, things did work without a department of any kind of welfare department, welfare entitlements.
Sure.
People still were taken care of in some manner, and probably, I believe, taken care of better and at more of a cooperative, loving Christian type environment too.
The federal welfare state imposes horrible costs, and not just financial costs. When you have this kind of one-size-fits-all command and control model of things, you end up doing just terrible, terrible things. Where I live, the poorest congressional district in the United States, in Jose Serrano's district, And the reason for that isn't because there's some sort of natural blight that has caused people to be poor there. It's because the predominant form of housing is federal housing projects, where the income typically is $0 per year. So what we did was we took housing for poor people, which had been widely dispersed and mixed throughout the city, which actually was a good thing for most people, because poor people benefit tremendously by having less poor neighbors, because they get better public services, they get better policing, they get better schools, they get a better environment. It's a healthy thing to have people mixed up in society. What we did was we created these ghettos, these segregated, concentrated, walled-off, enormous buildings and complexes of buildings where the poor are housed exclusively. All the people they interact with are equally impoverished and dependent on government, so they don't have a chance to do things like engage in the kind of social networking that helps people find jobs, connect with opportunities, things like that. Now, no one ever planned it to turn out that way. They just thought, well, here's an efficient method to do things, and they built them exactly the way we build prisons. And our schools are built the way we build prisons as well. I don't know if you've ever been through a New York City public school, but it's exactly like walking into a prison in Texas. There's the control at the door, there's the metal detector, there's the security, the bells and the door controls and all the rest of it. So no one ever intended to inflict these externalities both on society and on the poor that we're actually allegedly trying to help with these programs, but that's the way they turned out. So would we be able to do better for the people who really need social services? Well, yeah, I think so. As you pointed out, we had other models in the past for doing this, and I think there are probably other models in the future. One of the things I'm particularly interested in is the 19th century mutual aid societies. It was particularly prominent among northeastern ethnic immigrant groups like the Irish and the Italians, where they would have these benevolent societies, as they were known. And what they were essentially was small, cooperatively owned insurance companies that offered various kinds of social insurance for things like disability and unemployment and sickness and things like that, where people actually were able to get together and contribute a little bit of money from their very, very modest incomes and provide a form of mutual social insurance. And I think that's the sort of thing I would like to see us doing more of. I think it would make society not only free but more stable and more happy. One of the reasons that people tend to look to big government is because we're insecure. Even though we're the wealthiest, safest, healthiest people there have ever been in the world, we have a great deal of insecurity. We feel vulnerable about things, because you can have one heart attack and it's a $500,000 hospital bill and you can't pay it and you're broke forever, right? So that's why people turn to big government. We can take away a good deal of that social insecurity and that economic insecurity by using much more effective methods of risk management than we've used in the past.
Yeah, I hear you, because my father was an insurance salesman, and I grew up, learning what exactly is insurance, and it's a very cooperative thing. Most people at that time, this is when I was a child back in the 50s and 60s, early 60s. Life insurance was for two things. Number one, it was if when you passed away, your funeral expenses would be paid. In effect, right. You are saving for that all your life with your very modest contribution, monthly payments to the insurance company. And then the other one was for if your untimely demise for whatever reason, the insurance money would be there to take care of your widow and orphans. Right. And that was a private thing. My father worked for a private insurance company. He wasn't working for a so-called government insurance company. So I think insurance is one of the ways that people handle a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, and the thing is, we tend to insure against the wrong things, because the way our healthcare system is set up and it's all third-party payers, we're trying to insure against things that we know are going to happen. When you turn 50, you're going to need certain kinds of examinations. You're going to need a prostate cancer exam, right? It's not something really to insure against, but we buy health insurance expecting to offset all of these costs involved with healthcare and things like that we know are going to come. You know you're going to need a checkup. You know you're going to need dental cleaning and all that sort of thing. But we buy insurance against that, even though it's not really an insurable risk, because if the risk of something happening is 100% by a certain day, then it's not really an insurable risk. But we spend very little money insuring ourselves against the things that we really ought to insure ourselves against. Most people don't carry additional private disability insurance. Most people don't carry long-term chronic disease or care insurance. Most people don't carry private income insurance or private unemployment insurance, partly because there's crowding out through the welfare state, and partly because people just don't like to think about those things. But that's the sort of stuff that you really ought to insure against. We've been in this big debate over the last couple of months about extending unemployment benefits. And while I can certainly see the case for saying, well, hey, these are publicly funded, so 99 weeks is more than enough. But the truth is, particularly for some, upper income people, it can take a year, 2 years, 3 years to get yourself back to where you had been if you were in a fairly high-paying job, and you've got obligations to meet in the meantime. I think if people were smart, they would fund out of their own pocket, very serious lost income insurance for this sorts of things. You might want to have a 5-year plan or a 4-year plan that would make up lost income if your company goes out of business or if you become disabled or something else happens, because that's a real huge life-changing thing, and that is the kind of thing that you ought to be able to insure against.
Yeah, they used to call that, saving for a rainy day. And for
certainly. But there are more effective ways to save, of course.
Well, this is very interesting, and once again, Kevin, we're coming to the end of a segment that goes very quickly on this show, and you're a wonderful, wonderful guest. It's very fascinating, all the things you're telling us. So, folks, when we come back after this short commercial break, we'll be talking once again with Kevin Williamson. Kevin is an author of The Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism, coming out next month, and he's an editor of National Review magazine. So, Kevin, hold on the line, and folks, we'll be right back. Well, folks, welcome back. This is Pat Barron, your guest host for Radio Free Market, and our guest today is Kevin Williamson from National Review magazine, and we've been having a fascinating conversation about how to transition from big government to smaller government. And, Kevin, I would like to just go back a little bit. Last segment you talked about the way we could provide many of our things that make us insecure, how we could insure against that through mutual aid societies and things like that. But getting back even further than that, a lot of folks are saying, what's going on out there right now? Are we approaching the point that we really have to take this seriously? Are we approaching the end of big government as we know it?
I think yes. It's always dangerous to make predictions like this, and you're giving a hostage to fortune and all the rest of it. But what's going on in the world right now does not look like a normal business cycle recession, I think, to almost anybody. None of the serious economists who I read and consult with on these things thinks it looks like a normal business cycle recession. There's something else going on there. And what's going on, of course, is a series of fiscal crises, not having to do with private enterprise, but having to do with insolvent states. The Eurozone is on the edge of falling apart. Previously, allegedly and purportedly prosperous nations like Ireland and possibly Portugal and possibly Spain are needing bailouts from their neighbors. The truth is the European Union does not have enough money collectively to bail out all of the European Union members. They're going to need bailouts. There are going to be almost certainly defaults and haircuts given to bondholders. And we're about to see the same thing start happening in the United States. If you just take state and local employee pension obligations alone, you've got $3 trillion in unfunded liabilities. At least 27 states are heading toward insolvency just from their pension plans alone, not to mention the rest of their spending and other sorts of problems. So, do we have the sorts of resources where 27 U.S. states can get bailed out by the rest of them? That doesn't seem to me very likely. The federal government certainly doesn't have the money to do it. They can print money, which they've been doing, and monetizing the debt, but eventually the markets are going to look at that and demand higher interest rates, which is going to completely change the calculus. What the Europeans have been up to and what we're about to get up to is they're trying to head off default by almost any means, not because it's the smartest thing to do, it's the most economically viable thing to do, but because if some EU country defaults on its debt, every country in the world, except maybe Germany, maybe China, is going to have a much, much harder time borrowing money. And if there's one thing politicians love, they love it more than anything else. They love to be able to borrow money. You know, a politician without a national credit card is like a crack fiend without his crack. You know, they can't live without it. It's their favorite thing in the world. And to them, the definition of disaster is not national insolvency. It's not recession. It's not impoverishing their country. It's losing their ability to borrow money on the international credit markets. So that's what's going on right now. And but the truth is, I mean, I don't think anyone who's looked at this thinks that it's sustainable. I mean, there are going to be defaults. I mean, there will be defaults through devaluation, or there'll be defaults through some, you know, formal restructuring that's not actually called a default, but everyone's going to know what it is, and it is coming. And you can't, you know, we couldn't engage in the level of spending that we're engaging in right now in the United States and fund it through taxes. We just couldn't do it. There's not enough money out there to get it done. You can't collect revenue on that level. We literally could not pay our unfunded pension liabilities, even if we took the tax rate up to 100%. There's just not the money there to do it. So yeah, that is going to change. There's no question about it.
Yeah, you talking about how the problem is at governments at all levels. Just this weekend, I was visiting my 94-year-old father-in-law in Decatur, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And I picked up the paper over the weekend, and the headline was that Decatur, Illinois, which is an industrial town, central Illinois industrial town of about 50 or 60,000 people, 70% of the real estate tax revenue goes to paying current pensions for police, firemen, and city employees.
Oh, yeah.
So 30% of the revenue is what has to actually take care of the current expenses of the city.
Yeah.
70% is, and that's rising. There was a statistic that I can't really quite remember, but it was 5 years ago. It was much lower than 70%. It was something like 40%. So
yeah, Illinois actually is the worst off state in the union when it comes to the pension problems. There's one economist who thinks they could, you know, end up insolvent within the next year. Just on the basis of that. And you've got these little places like Decatur and little towns like that are just outrageously over-leveraged in terms of these obligations. And the problem, of course, in Illinois, as in lots of other states, is that it's written both into state statute and into the Constitution that these pension payments cannot be lowered, they cannot be reneged upon, they have to be made. So you have a matter of constitutional law coming up against a matter of economic reality, which is they don't have the money to do it, which suggests to me, I mean, the employees' unions are not going to take this lying down. They're not going to agree to a reduction, even if they had the power to do that, which it's not clear that they do. So you're talking about this going probably to the Supreme Court in some sort of really nasty, protracted legal fight that's going to establish, you know, probably some sort of new area of bankruptcy law having to do with what states do when they go bankrupt, because we've never had a state go bankrupt before, so it's uncharted territory.
Well, that's really fascinating. I think it's a big topic, and all these segments, Kevin, they go very quickly, and we're actually coming to the end of another segment. And folks, we're with Kevin Williamson of National Review Magazine, and we'll be right back to discuss these important issues right after the break. Stay with us.